Hello, and welcome to Imperva's Database Security and Compliance Competitive Brief. This brief is designed to assist prospective customers with summary information regarding key differentiators within the database security and compliance landscape. Thank you for attending today's session. My name is Aaron Connell. I am currently a Senior Solutions Architect working with Imperva for 5 years now. During my time at Imperva, I've worked within professional services, deploying our database security and compliance solutions, and I've managed the professional services firm for the Northeast United States. A significant proportion of my experience in the cybersecurity field has been primarily focused on what has historically been called database activity monitoring, or DAM for short, and sometimes referred to as data access prevention, or DAP, which is the database firewall counterpart of DAM. My career in cybersecurity over the past 20 plus years has provided a great deal of interaction with many database security and compliance initiatives, including working with a do-it-yourself approach, implementing and evaluating various native audit solutions, and deploying what is now called IBM Guardium for multiple national and international enterprise organizations as a subject matter expert, including deploying Guardium within IBM as a team lead, my customer being the CIO, and our initiative being to protect all of IBM's crown jewels. When IBM eventually ousted the internal Guardium project due to insufficient blue dollars to pay for the ever-increasing appliance footprint and an absent ROI, I began investigating alternatives to Guardium. At my next appointment, I became a customer of Imperva, again, deploying database security and compliance for a top Fortune 500 company, falling in love with the solution, and eventually joining the Imperva team directly as a result. So enough about me. Let's talk about the top 4 competitors in this space, and I'll provide summary observations for each. The options in this space are the do-it-yourself scripting, native audit solutions, IBM Guardium, and of course Imperva's database security and compliance solution. Before jumping into the differentiators, let's set the stage for what most enterprise customers are looking for from a foundational standpoint. Then, we'll cover each requirement as it applies to the database security and compliance competitor to see how they really stand up against each other. First, what are DBAs most concerned about? And if you said resources, then you're absolutely correct. There is a lot of money tied up in database architecture, and every percent of CPU is accounted for and guarded. How many FTEs are required to administrate the solution? How easy to deploy and move into steady state? How easy is it to provide reports, create policies, provide automation with things like APIs, apply updates and patches? And what type of footprint is required to meet monitoring, logging, and any security-related goals? What about centralized reporting, forensic data analysis, and last but not least, what type of expertise is required for deployment, the day-to-day operations, the analysis of output, ongoing tuning, health monitoring, etc. These are often the concerns I've heard regarding manageability. So how quickly can I grow, expand, mature policies, move to virtual, move to the cloud, work within my CI/CD or DevSecOps processes, compatibility with the database platforms I use such as big data, mainframe, database as a service such as Amazon RDS, etc. And then the indirect costs such as the human resources required, supporting infrastructure such as the data centers and virtual host and cloud infrastructure, database resources such as CPU and memory, and unseen costs such as time to value, risk that's introduced before steady state, and the ability to mature quickly. A lot of security-related solutions are good for collecting information, and database security and compliance solutions are generally not an exception to that. What organizations really want, however, is analytics, output that clearly provides insight into what's going on within databases that would introduce risk into the organization. Whether that be data exfiltration that may involve sensitive data such as PII, machine takeover scenarios, changes to financial records, violations to data governance policies such as share usage of privileged user accounts or usage of default or system accounts, and any combination thereof. How about real-time alerting as to when unauthorized actions take place? Or the ability to block specific types of actions from happening as is defined by corporate governance or policy? Absolutely. All of these things are of concern to the many organizations we work with here at Imperva. Now, let's talk about the differentiators within each of the 4 competitors. The do-it-yourself option generally involves a DBA with some serious backbone and scripting skills. This often involves creating queries to collect information, store that information, and then further query that information at a later date for ad hoc reporting purposes. All very manual. The do-it-yourself approach is what we say a lot of organizations start with in order to essentially check that box, specifically as it applies to audit requirements or ad hoc security insights. From a manageability standpoint, there is an absence of central management. Everything is essentially manual. There is no separation of duties for security concerns. Additionally, when key personnel are no longer part of the project, those that created the scripts, etc., oftentimes the project falls apart very quickly as a result. Oftentimes, organizations hit a tipping point as it applies to what is being monitored and find that the database resource hit is more than what was expected. As a result, this methodology quickly finds its limitations and generally falls short of a comprehensive solution. From a scalability standpoint, every script that is written has to be written in many different versions in order to support various database platforms. This often requires many resources to facilitate and doesn't really provide a lot of value in the end, and makes manageability very difficult as well. Furthermore, the more scripts you place on a database system, the greater the hit on those database resources, especially when you're recording thousands or millions of queries in many instances. On the same database that is serving production, this becomes an even greater problem. This equals exponential cost in database resources, again, not providing much value in comparison to the limited amount of data eventually collected in most instances here. The unseen costs here were already spelled out for the most part and impact both human resources to manually configure and maintain scripts across enterprise databases beyond their often already taxed cycles, as is common with many DBAs, as well as the rapid growth of database hardware required to process and store these transactions within the databases themselves. Additionally, the risk of only monitoring a small subset of what is actually required and not having any true analytics is hard to quantify from a risk scenario. Typically, organizations want to buy down risk. Do-it-yourself solutions like this often add more risk in the end for reasons mentioned previously. From a visibility standpoint, there is a serious issue with the do-it-yourself approach, specifically separation of duties. A DBA, for instance, could just disable the script, do something against policy, and then re-enable without anybody really knowing. It also lacks a holistic database security and compliance approach. We're missing many data points to determine the risk that's inherent in certain kinds of transactions. For example, a query of 10,000 records may not be a big deal, but if that data has sensitive PII involved, then it is a big deal. Scripting doesn't provide insight or visibility at all. Think of it as a very static approach. And last but not least, all reporting is completely custom as well, and generally never aggregated across more than a single database instance due to the nature of scripting that's required. So for native audit, this is generally the next logical step for most organizations moving away from the do-it-yourself approach. and seems to make sense at first because there is generally already a relationship with the database vendor, MS SQL, Oracle, whatever. And these vendors will generally solicit such options as native audit to help provide the ability to audit database transactions, report on them with a bit more ease, and sometimes provide at least a degree of separation of duties. Nevertheless, nearly all of the pitfalls of the do-it-yourself approach apply to native audit as well. From a manageability standpoint, native audit remains non-centralized, incapable of moving across database platforms, and often hits the same tipping point, so to speak, meaning organizations end up having to minimize the policies put into place due to the resource hit that is inherent with native audit. It's in the best interest for database vendors to provide native audit capabilities, even sometimes at a discount or with perks, because it causes exponential growth of the databases themselves. Unfortunately, native audit doesn't scale well either. Again, a different version of software is required, and many times a different methodology for each database platform you want to provide audit capabilities with. This leads to the same unseen costs as referenced again with the do-it-yourself approach, but with native audit on a much larger scale. We've seen native audit running up to 20 to 30% of database resources consistently before organizations say enough's enough. Visibility is a little better from the native audit capabilities, but oftentimes organizations find that, again, with the limited scope at which they're able to monitor for compliance initiatives, native audit provides organizations with very little risk buy-down. What good is incomplete data after all? From a security standpoint, there really is no value provided from native audit. IBM Guardium is what I would consider Imperva's only real competitor, as it is capable of a more holistic database compliance approach and has the ability to deploy using a lightweight agent where transactions are offloaded for processing on dedicated hardware away from the databases being monitored. Many organizations end up moving away from native audit or deploy Guardium due to an existing relationship with IBM. Guardium does provide a centrally managed infrastructure capable of monitoring and reporting across disparate database platforms. Nevertheless, nearly every organization that deploys Guardium finds that management of the infrastructure and software is extremely taxing, mainly due to inherent design flaws. These underlying issues require a large resource hit on the Guardium infrastructure, requiring a large footprint to manage, monitor, upgrade, patch, etc. Agents can be deployed in order to monitor both local and network traffic on databases, however, require a significant manual effort to manage during installation, and during database peaks when agents may need to point to Guardium hardware, called collectors, with more resources to handle the load. Limitations to the number of collectors associated to a central manager, which is where policies are created and reports are ran, further complicate and increase infrastructure requirements. The underlying flaws within Guardium's architecture also pose some serious issues with scalability, as a tipping point, again, is often seen eventually with Guardium as well, wherein the infrastructure required and subsequent cost associated with that infrastructure limits again the scope at which organizations can monitor for compliance initiatives. Essentially, the same pitfalls as the do-it-yourself approach and native audit, now on an even greater scale and cost with Guardium. A recent Forrester analyst report shows that the underlying costs with Guardium are significant, primarily due to infrastructure costs and human resources required to operate the day-to-day administration and maintenance of that large infrastructure. I've seen several instances of Guardium being given to organizations by IBM, only requiring the support and maintenance fees, only to find later that it's still too expensive to operate based on the ROI. Furthermore, the report provides understanding around risk that is not bought down by Guardium, as Guardium has very few security-specific capabilities beyond the standard static policy approach that offer little value, and even then requiring extreme expertise to deploy. Additionally, in my personal experience, the time to value is a huge factor here. Most implementations, with the help of IBM professional services, has taken greater than a year and a half to sometimes more than 2 years to move into a steady state environment. Again, finishing off with a substandard level of monitoring for compliance due to infrastructure and management overhead. Guardium will provide aggregated reporting across all databases and platforms monitored as it applies to compliance initiatives. These reports are, however, very difficult to create and edit when necessary. Guardium will provide alerting and blocking capabilities, but again, not in real time, and often do not get enabled by organizations due to the additional constraints they bring to an already grossly complex environment. So, Guardium will provide centralized management and reporting across disparate database platforms. However, we have to beware that tipping point, the unseen costs, and expect a significant time to value before a minimal solution is realized. So here is why Imperva is the only clear choice when it comes to database security and compliance. Imperva provides a holistic database security and compliance approach that is centrally managed, uses a lightweight agent where transactions are offloaded for all of the heavy lifting on dedicated hardware called gateways, away from the databases being monitored. Unlike Guardium, however, these agents are smart and require very little knowledge of the databases they're being installed on, automatically detecting both local and network listeners that are active or that become active at a later date, ensuring important security gaps are not overlooked. Where Imperva parts ways from the do-it-yourself and native audit approach is seen within Imperva's capability to reduce database resource load significantly, while also reducing required footprint over solutions like IBM Guardium between 30 to 40%. All while providing comprehensive audit capabilities enabled to collect all transactions, not a small subset, and without any tipping points we see in all other solutions available today. Additionally, Imperva is designed for ease of use, utilizing an intuitive interface that provides a very quick time to value. My personal experience proving that similarly scoped deployments such as were executed for IBM Guardium that took nearly 2 years were realized in just a few short weeks with Imperva. Reporting? Easy. 2 clicks from any data view within Imperva and your report is ready. Additional edits to reports are extremely intuitive. Another instance where you can skip reading the directions, so to speak, as many of us here do. Imperva provides the industry's widest range of compatibility, as well as an extremely simple license model that is only interested in one thing: how many databases do you need to protect? Mainframe, iSeries, Big Data, Teradata, Sybase, MS SQL, Oracle Exadata, Imperva has you covered. Moving or planning a move to the cloud? Imperva provides coverage for many common cloud-based databases, including several RDS database types, with new functionality soon to be released that will allow for literally any database monitoring using what is called Imperva's Database Connector. Do you have serverless or containerized technologies that spin up databases on the fly, but still need to monitor for compliance and or concerned about security? Imperva has a solution for that too, with the ability to automatically detect RDS databases brought up on cloud accounts and automatically attach those databases to compliance and security policies without any human interaction or expertise required beyond an intuitive initial configuration. Welcome to Cloud Data Security, also included at no additional cost as part of every license. Need virtual appliances instead of hardware? Imperva has compatibility with VMware, Xen, and Hyper-V out of the box, along with native virtual instances available for AWS and Azure, with GCP on its way. And the licensing model allows you to deploy as many as you need or like without any additional cost from Imperva. That means organizations can take advantage of Imperva's gateway clustering, which enables an industry-first and only automated agent load balancing, as well as native redundancy and failover advantages, without any additional fees or line items on the bill of sale. All of this means a great reduction of overall cost, from the much more palatable price tag of Imperva over Guardium to the reduction of required infrastructure costs. All leads to a reduction of human resources required to manage and maintain Imperva, and we haven't even told you the good part yet. Imperva provides what no other vendor has dreamed of: data risk analytics. Want to know when risk and how much risk is introduced into your database program on a per transaction basis? Imperva does it, and it requires zero expertise. Data risk analytics is packed with more than 20 security use cases that provide visibility into risky behaviors, data exfiltration, machine takeover, violations such as usage of default user accounts, sharing of privileged user accounts, etc. But not just another tool that provides a list of events. DRA, or Data Risk Analytics, provides a complete narrative around the who, the why, and what the implications are, what influenced the risk rating associated with the event, as well as details on how to mitigate and/or respond to the event or events. DRA takes tens of millions of database transactions and helps you focus on where the risk is in your organization by prioritizing the human effort required to address such risk. And it comes complete with an executive level dashboard and reporting showing a clear ROI day after day. From small to massive database security and compliance needs, Imperva is the clear solution. Intuitive management, configured to scale, grows and goes wherever you are, smaller footprint, reduced load on database resources, limited human resource requirements, which all equal reduced costs, reduced risk, and an amazing ROI. And we integrate with other security vendors across the board with ease, providing more visibility into your data than ever seen before. But don't take our word for it. The industry analysts and customers alike continue to see Imperva as the clear choice when it comes to securing your data and ensuring compliance. Thank you for taking the time to view this database security and compliance competitive brief. Any questions, comments, or inquiries, please feel free to contact your Imperva account executive listed here.